Hello, and welcome to Shades of Pleasure, a podcast celebrating pleasure, sexuality, and the vibrant, inclusive spectrum of love, gender, and relationships. I'm your host, Mo, and with me are my co-hosts, Melissa, Wayne, and Kelly. And together we hope to dismantle tropes that no longer suit us and change the narrative towards more authentic living. Well, what are we talking about today?
I really want to pick your brain, Mo. Let's see if we can't like do a train of thought and backtrack to why it is that you thought hierarchy might be.
I'm trying to think, but I feel like, oh, I know. So in book club, the book club that Elle hosts at Last, they're reading my book, Love is Not a Pie. And Love is Not a Pie is all about non-monogamy, but it's a lot about there's also a lot of stuff in there about like friends with benefits, like more like hookup culture. It's an old book. Like I wrote that book in 2014, so it's a decade old. And there's a lot of stuff in there about hookup culture, friends with benefits, being single and hooking up. It's kind of like, let's look at it from a different perspective. But it's like I realized like one of the major things missing from that book was that it was either that we were single and that we were like practicing like casually hooking up with people in an ethical way, or we were coupled and we were trying to have multiple poly or multiple relationships. And so but the thing that was missing in that book was the non-hierarchical stuff. And that I feel like has become a lot more talked about in more recent years. But I think, and maybe we have talked about this before, and Melissa's probably right, it's like kind of beating a dead horse, that non-hierarchical practices are it's kind of hard. Like, do any of you know people that are successfully practicing non-hierarchical non-monogamy?
But at that point, we're getting into relationship anarchy, kind of, right? Like, what is that? Is that nuanced, or is that like how would you differentiate?
Yeah, I think relationship anarchy is a form of non-hierarchical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the way that I understand it is that relationship anarchy isn't exclusive to non-monogamy, because you can also be monogamous and practice relationship anarchy. And so there's relationship anarchy, I think, focuses a lot on kind of just the general like concept and practice of, you know, of agency in your relationships and creating your own relationships as you see fit for yourself. So kind of the things that we talk about when we talk about non-monogamy, but really, yeah, like it's kind of all under the umbrella of relationship anarchy. But I think you can still, again, you can be monogamous, you can practice hierarchy, non-hierarchy, and still practice relationship anarchy. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. Specifically, I'm talking about like even with an anchor partner, I think that I feel like the couple that we're thinking about, we're practicing a form of non-hierarchical polyamory.
Oh, that's interesting. So I didn't think about that until just now when you said that, of like, I think sometimes we talk about hierarchy and non-hierarchy as like an all or nothing thing. Is it possible to be on the spectrum of that somewhere and not have to like pressure yourself to fit yourself in either category very exclusively, or,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. I didn't think about that till now.
Yeah, and there's some sort of overlap here with just power dynamics, because I'm thinking even in monogamous relationships, there's always somebody that kind of holds the most power, and they kind of get I don't know. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? Or is that not even worth going down that road?
No, I actually
I
think
think so.
I think it is, because I think that what I think is important, because I think that a lot of times, we go in, people come into situations not even understanding the power dynamic within a relationship. And now when we're in it, we're a couple years in it or a couple months in it, now we realize that there is a definite power dynamic within a relationship that we didn't sign up for, that we didn't agree to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That there is even a power dynamic. I think people are surprised, or like, wait, a power dynamic? Because of, just the word power has kind of usually a negative connotation. It's like, yes, all relationships have some form of power dynamic. And whether you know it or not, or you talk about it, so it's worth talking about and worth deciding what that looks like for you. Yeah, I think that was great, Kelly. Definitely a conversation about power dynamics. And
Right.
also one that includes the people outside of that primary or anchor relationship. So that's another thing too, like that's a huge thing about the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like that there can be nuance. Like the anchored partner didn't live with the other two. The other two lived together, and then the anchor partner lived separately, right? I feel like, yeah.
I don't know who we're talking about.
What happened?
I thought we were just or did Melissa and Mo have a conversation that Wayne and I weren't privy to?
Wait, what? I missed it. Say that again.
Mo seems to be talking about a specific couple that it sounds like you know about, and I'm like, who we be talking about?
No, I don't know about any specific
Mo,
couples.
I think you're on your own page. You're your own power dynamic hierarchy.
You look very cozy over there, Mo.
I'm having my own non-hierarchical solo poly
That's funny.
fiesta.
Said something about a book club. I thought we were talking about something about no. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, give us a rundown of this hypothetical situation we're talking about, just so we have some sort of structure around.
Oh, yeah. So in this hypothetical situation, there are two people that live together, and the anchor partner and one of the people that live together live separately. So it's an interesting, like what you're talking about, this like power dynamic. I think that power can be divided in different in different areas and categories. Like two people might be bonded financially, and two other people might be bonded, in another way. Kind of like relationship anarchy and non-hierarchical can like dance together, I guess, if that makes sense.
Beautiful way to discuss hierarchy in a relationship, because I know I've often heard it as we're going to be a hierarchical. We need to find a different word, first of all, because I hate saying that word.
Hard to say.
We're gonna either you practice hierarchy in our relationship or we're not, type of thing, But I love how you said, well, this is what the power dynamic, if we break it down to power dynamics, right? Like this is what the power dynamic is for this part of our life, and this is what it could be in this part. And we might agree that it would be different. So I like that. Kind of breaking that down and not just having a blanket, one blanket power dynamic in the relationship.
Yeah, I kind of like I talked about it the other day as like a partnership, like a partnership agreement, where same kind of more same thing you're saying, Mo, but just in a different way. Like we are agreeing, like you, this is your area, like your power, where you hold the power, like you do the finances, and over here I do the child care or whatever. I'm just making up some things, throwing them out here, but we're agreeing that these are things that how we kind of like are dividing up the power within the relationship. I think that because I say to people, like, a lot of times when people come into a relationship, they think about companionship, like they're thinking about like this is the person I'm with, but they even come in with the idea of like, okay, I'm the provider, or I'm this and I'm that. And they already come in with the power structure built into what they're unknowingly agreeing to. And I think that you wouldn't go into a business, and not to say that, not to compare it to business, but if we were, like, you would go in wanting to know what is expected of you.
Well,
Right.
yeah, and then we can't leave out like the whole part about mental load and emotional labor and all of that too. I mean, there's so many levels to this.
But I think they're all important because I think that this is how we end up in situations or relationships that we realize that doesn't work, that don't work for us or isn't beneficial for us. But if we figured out these things in the beginning and really had these conversations and see what is it that, and I've been asking recently, what does a partner look like to you? What is the expectations of a partner? May it be boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever the case may be. What is it that you require in a friend? Just simple things like this, because if you can know those for yourself, then you can kind of help you with the discernment of getting into any type of relationship with anybody, right? You now going in informed, making an informed decision about your choices you're making.
Informed decisions. That makes me think of,
Yeah.
if we break down power even more. Now I'm getting very analytical here.
I like
And
it.
we could break that down into, like, I think what people really just want to know, like you said, be clear on, have agreements on, is like, who's making decisions, like how, or not who, but like how are the decisions being made? And where is our time and energy? You know what I mean? Like how are we using our time and our energy and our focus and things like that? So I think that's what people want to know.
Well, and that's when my favorite word of front loading comes in. It's like you gotta know on the front end what the topics are, what the categories are, what you want. Because a lot of times you're kind of halfway down the road when you realize, wait, I don't like the way this is going. I didn't agree to this. This isn't what I thought I needed. And
Yeah.
it just talked about.
One day, me and Melissa were talking, and we even asked the question of, what does power mean to you? Like, what does control mean to you? Like, just breaking that down. Like,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
a good question.
I don't remember my answer. I don't even remember that conversation.
yeah, we were walking.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
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 yeah. Well, I felt like at the beginning you were starting to say, maybe not, but I felt like maybe you were gonna start to say that most people something, like, were you gonna say like most people prefer a hierarchical relationship? It makes me think of Dr. Jana. Dr. Jana talks about like how most people are somewhere like in the middle of monogamy. Most people are monogamish, like there's a few who are on the extreme spectrum of monogamous, and there are a few who are in the extreme spectrum of non-monogamous, and like everybody is kind of somewhere in the middle. Most people are kind of somewhere in the middle, and I would probably think that hierarchy would be included in that. So
But hey, Mo, what do you think?
yeah.
If your take on it is, yeah, I think most people want it to be hierarchical. So is it just because that feels safe to know what, does it just feel safer to people, you think?
Yeah, I think what I'm feeling is not that most people want to do it. I think that it's just the default.
the default.
Right. Yeah. And most people are coming into non-monogamy after monogamy,
Thank you. Right.
right? So in much the same way that consensual and ethical non-monogamy is an ideal that we strive for, so is non-hierarchical. All things that we strive for because they obviously, and Zoe can speak to this because Zoe knows that those concepts and ideals, they dismantle, they decolonize relationships, right? They decolonize us from the couple privilege. And so, work in progress. But I think we need to be more aware of that, like the social justice element of why we get into polyamory and non-monogamy. I mean, yeah, we do it because of adventure and excitement and but I think that we're also activists, right? There's a need to dismantle culture, you know.
Yeah, this was sort of the lens that you brought in our last talk, and this idea of what leftover monogamous ideology and rules are you sort of still playing by, even if you are out of that relationship.
Yeah, that was I feel like that was Wayne and Melissa's monogamy hangover.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like this is just a sort of another piece of that.
Okay, maybe, yeah. Yeah, it's not really like a well thought out thing, but I feel like it popped in my head. I'm like, we need to talk more about hierarchy. And maybe I just need to add a chapter about hierarchy in my book.
Well, Mo,
Not in there.
is there like a particular message or thought that you had in your head that you kind of wanted to get out into the world when you thought of this?
I think it was just that, yeah, I just want to know more about like how people feel about it. You know, like how do you two feel about it, Wayne?
Oh, that's good. Hi, Doc. Hi, Doc. You want me to go first? I like to think that I am interested in some form, some version of non-hierarchical. So it's funny because I was gonna ask, and I would like to ask it next of like, so what are some examples of non-hierarchy? You know, how is that practiced? But I think for me, the biggest thing that stands out about that practice, or like why I'd be interested in some version of that, is because while I wait, I'll come back to that. The other part that I wanted to say is, although I do find myself interested in non-hierarchy, I also find myself interested in hierarchy. So both, like I'm not hard on one or the other. And I think too, what I realized is like, regardless of how I feel about it, I mean, for the most part, I mean, that's just kind of, like you said, the default. That's how our relationship operates, is on hierarchy. And I think a big part of that is because Wayne and I share a lot of responsibilities. And so there kind of just tends to be
And natural hierarchy.
natural hierarchy and the need for some kind of priority, you know what I mean? Because of our time commitments, because of our responsibilities and, things like that. But I think so, back to the why I was interested in some version of like non-hierarchy is because I don't know, I guess I like the idea, at least in theory, I like the idea of holding all the people, whoever I'm connected with or have a relationship with outside of Wayne, that I want them to feel as important, you know what I mean? And I think that they would feel is as important to me too. And so, I would like that to be reflected in, I don't know, and how we navigate that relationship.
How
So,
much is that? Oh, sorry.
so I think now we're getting into what is perceived as a fear into most people's relationships when you say that, right? Because I tend to agree with you. I'm kind of both as well, and I think we know that we've had this discussion before.
That means like that means like include including them. What happened?
I don't know.
Oh,
Mo can't
you
get
know
it.
her. Mo is like
It's
she
the time
gives you
of
random
day.
giggles. Yeah, including it, like considering them as I don't want to say decision makers, but considering them in the decision making. Does that make sense? And like in considering how other people feel and what they need in this matter. Look at Mo. So funny. Yeah, so that's, in short, kind of the things those kind of distracted me. But,
Yeah, can you put this in? So I think it's, for me, it's like what comes up is that in working with couples, I realize that a lot of people want to feel special, so they need that idea of hierarchy within a relationship to know that no one is taking their space or getting the things that they get. Because what you'll hear a lot of times is that oh yeah, like you're supposed to open the door for me first, or you're supposed to check on me first, and it's all those things that come in, right? And I think that, because again, it's almost like a false sense of security to show the other person that I am higher in this relationship than you are. Like this
I
person,
have more security.
right? Right,
Mm.
right, and all those things come up, and so I think that then we get into couples privilege and all that kind of stuff, which we've spoken about before, right? And I think that it can be, and that it almost feels like it's not allowing the another person to feel a part of or feel as important within the relationship. So now it kind of feel like they can be discarded at any point, that maybe they're just there for fun or whatever, and not really there for a deeper connection to an extent, because that they don't get to, like, let's say, have some ability to make the ability to have some decisions, to make some decisions, and things like that. And so, yeah, so for me, again, I think that it could be scary because it starts to take away people's ability to be special. When I tell people is that you're already special within your relationship, that can't change, right? Because you've already spent time together, you've already created these memories, you already created these moments within a relationship, you already share certain responsibilities. No one can undo that. That is done. Like, that person is building their own relationship, their own timeline, their own events, and all the things that your events are there, and it can't be undone. They're done. They're there. And so, it's just a different way of looking at it. But yeah, I think that me and Melissa on the same page as far as, like, kind of between both, because I understand it at the end of the day, like, hey, Melissa, we can't just get up and go to spend time with somebody else because we have responsibilities. But also, like, when you're spending time with this person, why would you not fully be in present with that person, and being able to do all the things and not have to worry about me and how I'm feeling to enjoy that person, because we worry about how, what comes up for me or how I'm feeling, and all those type of things. So
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, the people wanting to feel special. But is that because of is that part of the monogamy hangover?
I would say yes. I would definitely say yes, because again, like, I need to feel like I'm number one.
What about also, I mean, not to get therapist-y, but also, and I don't know if it's the same, but like, I don't know, attachment wounds or attachment things like that, like, our past relationships. So I think, yes, sometimes it can be a false sense of security. And then sometimes, regardless of it, whether it's part of monogamy hangover or not, it could provide people some feeling of security.
And of course, yeah. And again, yeah, yes. Now, and again, yeah, we get into
Yeah.
anxious attachment, we get into codependency,
Mhm.
yeah, all those things. But yes, those all
Abandonment, fear of abandonment.
right.
Yeah.
Those are all a part of it, right?
Yeah.
But so which again are part of which are a very huge part of the monogamous experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also I do think just as humans, we do have this sense of sort of clinging to what is ours, to what we have, and wanting to hold that and almost feel like it's ownership. And I
Mhm.
think that's part of what non-monogamy pushes back on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, that goes back to speaking to how young I think the idea of monogamy is, because again, not to get too deep, but I believe that monogamy gets us away from the village ideology, where we have a bunch of, so we don't fall into the codependency or the anxious attachment style, because we have a whole village to support us and show up for us and be there for us. So it's not just based off of one person. And that person goes away or leaves us, now a whole world is over in some cases.
Yeah, I hear you. Can I ask about you two specifically?
Okay.
Um, how much of this do you feel like you've sort of figured out because of specific needs, because of specific other partners or specific relationships, or how much of this do you feel like you did have enough of an understanding around it to do some sort of front loading and agreement on the front end? Like, how much of it was like just trial and error?
Ooh, I think you want to believe that you come in knowing it, but it's definitely trial and error. The majority of us figuring this out about what worked for us and what didn't was trial and error. I think that it also, what helps is that being with other people gives you a different perspective of your partner. Gives you, sometimes it's like it helps you to appreciate parts of the things that you have, and in some things, yeah, you recognize that this person doesn't have these things, and that, am I to go without these things now because I've chosen this partner? So and so it brings up a lot, but it was definitely trial and error for Melissa and I, and I would like her to answer on her own.
What was the question? I was done.
I was asking, how much of this do you think you just sort of had to trial and error, just sort of feel around in the dark, and how much of it do you think you were able to make agreements outside of it? Because you said something that made me think about this, Melissa, that the other people that come in, they're going to have different needs, and so you two could be here making all kinds of agreements, but there could be someone that's coming in that would sort of blow those out of the water, but you wouldn't even have known. So just I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I that's kind of Wayne and I's story is a lot of our experience was trial and error. You start somewhere and then you hold on 1 second. You start somewhere and and then you adjust, and you try other things, or like we also did, you you don't adjust and you panic and you freak out and you get scared about the changes that are coming up and you resist it, and and it can be a struggle sometimes, and then yeah, at some point you're like, all right, something's got to give, what do we do? But I know that was a lot, that was
No,
it.
I get it. And I guess I'm kind of trying to think about all of this through the lens that Mo kind of started this out with like the social justice part and the sort of dismantling of the different societal norms. I mean, I think a lot of it is just that people weren't talking about it. There was no education around it. There was nobody out there helping folks front load and having enough experience, having enough of a sample size to say, okay, here's some different categories, here's some different
Mhm,
formats, here's some different whatevers, right?
mhm, mhm. Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, people are coming in and they're new to it. They're not, yeah, they're not thinking about hierarchy and okay, they're not thinking about monogamy hangover and all those things.
Yeah.
We said we talked about it like monogamy hangover. I didn't even know what that was. So we're constantly learning. We're constantly like, yeah, and I think the biggest skill though, ironically, isn't even about like, okay, how are we doing like this, what relationship structure or whatever. It's kind of some of the biggest skills that I've learned, or information about myself that I've learned, is like, oh, how do I listen to what I'm feeling? And like, what is my truth, and do I make space for my truth? Can I even allow that? And wow, how do I respond to that? I think like those, I know that's kind of abstract, but those are some of the biggest skills that I've learned, because at the end of the day, it doesn't, I don't want to like, make it too simple, but at the end of the day, it's like, it doesn't matter which path, where you go, here or there, right or wrong, hierarchy, non-hierarchy. I think ultimately what we're doing is we're just refining, how to listen to ourselves and how to respond to ourselves and with each other, and um things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that to right now, even to this day, that people still come along and challenge me and Melissa, things we haven't thought about, or things that come up, and so we're still ever evolving and still trying to figure out things. Like, we may think that we don't have something that may trigger us to make us feel some kind of way, or some work we may need, but then someone comes along and they're asking for stuff that you're like, oh wow, like, oh, I didn't know that we was gonna meet somebody who was actually going to want this or need this, and now I have to see how that makes me feel. So we're constantly shifting, changing, and adjusting to just, and then ourselves, we shift, we change, we grow, we've grown and we've shifted. So yeah.
I don't know if that answered your question, Kelly.
it does. I'm just thinking. How much of this do you feel like you did on your own, and how much of it do you think you did like through couples therapy or individual therapy, or because you went to grad school for psychology? Like, what do you think the biggest like transformative moments have been?
um for us personally, I think, or and for me, I'll speak for me personally, the biggest transformative moments, The biggest transformative moments. I mean, yes, a good percentage of like researching and looking up information and on my own. But I think a big part of that for me was mostly that it just kind of opened up the door. You know, I don't know that. Okay, baby. I don't know that I would like recommend and encourage people to be like, okay, you gotta like learn all of these things and the terms and whatever. Like learn enough and then go out there and try it. I don't know, like you know, I mean, kind of create
Experiential.
some preparation or some, you know, safety guidelines for yourself or whatever. But it's very experiential, in my opinion. And the biggest transformative moments were all of the hard times that Wayne and I had.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to say,
Seriously,
I was going to keep
like
it simple and just say conflict.
conflict.
Conflict
Yeah,
was our biggest
That
opportunity.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah. Conflict was our biggest opportunity for growth.
Yeah. And through the conflict, and then like not being so afraid of the conflict anymore,
Yeah.
now we're able to, it doesn't come up as conflict, but now it just kind of comes up as like opportunity. And then we're like, ooh, what's this opportunity feel like or whatever? Because like you said, you know, people we're like today, even so, we're meeting people, we're connecting with people, they are asking for things, they want things, they have desires, interests, and things like that, and might be different from what we've already been doing, or it might put us into new territory. And then we're like, ooh, okay, what, this is interesting. Do I want to go down that path or not, or whatnot, you know? So now it feels like more like opportunity for us versus conflict. But before, that shit was conflict all the time. Anybody came around, brought up a new idea, territory, and ask, it was like conflict, conflict, conflict.
Something just came up for me and I thought about it. I don't think that people do this enough. I think that people make decisions in their relationships in these rules not out of fear more so.
Mhm.
And I think that what it doesn't get asked enough to themselves is what is it that I want? What does it look like for me? Because I think that if people ask that more for themselves, I think they can have more empathy for their partner. If I can understand what it is that I would want for me and what does it look like for me to want these things and desires, and knowing that and accepting that part of me, because I know there's a lot of shame and guilt comes with it because me and Melissa have dealt with it within ourselves in our relationship. But I think that that can be super transformative in a relationship.
Yeah, and the what am I afraid of? Not only what do I want, what do I need, but what am I afraid of?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, well, exactly. What am I afraid of? Like what's what you know, right? What am I afraid of losing? What's and then we can have these conversations, right? What am I afraid of what's going to change? Because change is scary because we don't. It's unknown. It's the change. It's the unknown.
How do you approach, because I know at one point this was a really huge topic for me, and I'm about to tell you now what it is, but and I think a lot of people can relate of how do you approach when because you ask yourself, what do I want, right? So
Right.
what, when my desire triggers my partner, when my desire is now my partner's, you know, struggle.
Yeah, and I think that well, first before we even get there, right? We try to we kind of put out there, you know, because I think that this is something we did. What is your ideal non-monogamous relationship look like? What right? If you didn't have to consider me, if you didn't think about me, what does that look like? So then you get to all the things out there that you want and what it looks like to you without having to think about your partner, right?
Mhm.
And so then now you kind of got it all out there, and then you can have a discussion, a conversation around what does come up for the other person around those things because now we put it out there. So it gives you a better understanding of baseline of the things that you just talked about. Like what parts of my desires trigger my partner? So before I even go there and start to ask for those things, I'm already knowing because we're having a conversation about it. And so we can try to start to figure out ways to kind of get that to make that happen if it's possible within a relationship to come out.
So scary, like the amount of like safety that has to be fostered to be able to be that honest and transparent and vulnerable. Those are really we're talking about is like, oh yeah, you just say this. If
Yeah,
those can be like core shattering conversations.
absolutely. It's yeah, especially when we were talking about hierarchy, when I think we've been kind of socialized to prioritize our relationship, not just over other relationships. Like that's a, I feel like that's an intermediate experience. I'm just talking about like prioritize our relationships over ourselves. I think people can't even get past that sometimes, you know.
I think I heard something the other day on the lines of something, I don't know it verbatim, so I'm not gonna quote it to the T, but it was something on the lines of the amount of or the way that I don't take care of myself because I'm trying to take care of your heart.
Yeah. Wait, you heard that where?
I can't remember. I heard the other day, and it's basically, like yeah, like how I not abandon myself, but how I forego my own needs and because I'm trying to take care of your heart. So I'm not even taking care of me because I'm so much trying to take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. You're gonna break.
Mhm. I think a lot of people see that in a bunch of different ways. I mean, I was heard of that the other day. I got this new dog and I take such better care of myself because I'm taking such good care of this dog. And like I can do that in relationships too. And so I think there in a lot of cases um we can value a lot of things above ourselves and then end up resentful about it or end up
Yeah.
making unhealthy agreements because of it.
Before we go, I would like to know, I don't know, like I think people would like to know what are some ideas or some examples of non-hierarchy? Like what does that even mean or look like? Yeah.
Ideally, it means like there is no primary partner, right?
So in practice, what can that look like, or what are some examples?
Well, I think if you live with a primary partner, like you two do, obviously, it can entail like maybe redefining or restructuring the primary relationship somewhat, maybe, or restructuring some of the other relationships to be more balanced.
I think too that okay, baby. I like to think that that I don't think that we can still have a primary. Is it possible like we can still have a primary partner and identify that and still practice non-hierarchy? It's not that it like we don't have a primary partner. What do you think?
I think you can.
Yeah.
I think you can have a anchor partner. Maybe the primary is, well, primary in and of itself is hierarchical, right? Because it's primary, secondary.
Right.
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah. And I think that you would have to start out, with no primary partner, and I think that even in that, they would have everybody involved would have to. I feel like it had to be so emotionally mature to handle that relationship and show up and not feel like because it's easy to start to want more than the other person or start to see the other person is getting some things and now I want those things as well. Again, we all want to feel special to an extent.
Good point. Like how, yeah, you if you already have a relationship, yeah, how do you become non-hierarchical if you kind of already have a relationship that you have history with and all that stuff, so it's like
Yeah.
So I have my
like you
idea.
said, Mo, there's kind of automatically going to be this natural hierarchy just by time
Right.
definition.
Yeah.
I don't think that to an extent, but I think that if you were to integrate the person or whoever it is into the daily life, and now they start to take on the shared responsibilities, now it can become that non-hierarchical relationship because now it's shared. We're all integrated and shared amongst all of us.
I think you're seeing like kind of like not a throuple, but like a person. But even if your partners aren't like part of your day to day or whatever, I think like one example could be, this is a very small and silly one, but it's a real one of like, who do you spend certain holidays with? Or like your birthday or something like that. I think in a hierarchical relationship, the assumption is, well, duh, you're gonna spend it with me. You know, your husband, your wife, your partner, your main partner who you've been with for many years. Like, why wouldn't you spend your birthday with me?
Yeah,
That does feel like a big one.
that's an assumption. That's like, I think that's where you would start, is like dismantling some of those like
Yeah.
patterns, assumptions,
Yeah. Or even something smaller than that. Like, I don't know, you know, mm, we're 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 hanging out. We're on a date, like me and Wayne or something, like we're spending time together or whatnot. And then one of our partners messages us and maybe needs our support or asks like, hey, are you available? Or can you talk? Or something like that. And I think a strict hierarchy would be like, well, could be an assumption. It's like, hey, we're spending time together, we're on a date, or we're spending time together, like you should be focusing on me. And I know there's nuance here, right? Like sometimes yes, but also yeah, there could be space to say, well, this person kind of is asking for me right now, and I feel like, yeah, is it
I
possible?
think I think that consciously making an effort to undo some of those um things that you got used to expecting is part of the I think it's doable. Like I definitely think that partners who embark on non-monogamy together, who start out as primary partners, can definitely transition to being non-hierarchical. It just takes some concerted effort.
Mhm.
And you have to be clear about the why, like why are you doing it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and
What's
that's
what's
why
the
I brought up
purpose?
the ownership of time at that one point, because people
Yeah.
start to feel like they own your time, whether they're with you or not, right?
Mhm.
And so I think what you're saying, Mo, is like you would start with something like that. Like, let's talk about what the ownership of time is and what.
Yeah. Yeah, can we not have this tradition anymore? And I think like in our culture we see it as, well, we can't take a step down. We can't go backwards in our relationship, but can you still feel just as strongly about someone and and not adhere to tradition and obligation and um investments, that you, including responsibilities. Can you have responsibilities and still be non-hierarchical?
Yeah. And I think that, I can, again, going back to me and Melissa as an example, I think that it's just intention, because I think that we've been pretty intentional as of recent around that, because she used a real example when she said, we out on a date and someone needs something, and so even though we're spending time together, intentional time together, we're like, hey, this person needs this, and we're open to doing that because we understand what
We've
we
made a commitment to other people too.
yes,
And so
that right there.
yeah,
Yes.
we we're responding to the commitment that we've made to the other people in our lives as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
it's not just this automatic, like, well, you're my husband, so I always have to choose you first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it shouldn't be
And
automatic.
sometimes like choosing the other person isn't choosing the other person. Sometimes it's choosing myself. When I respond to my other partner or something, it's not always because of them or for them, it's for me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense, right?
Mo, I think you made me the one last thing. I know Kelly, you gotta go, but it made me think of like you talked about dismantling kind of the traditions or how we see things. And I think we all often see it as very linear. And I think the whole thing about hierarchy is like there's this more important. It kind of like implies more important or better or something like that. And so if we maybe look at it more, what's the word? Like not horizontally, but like more,
Can we zoom out?
what's that? Yeah, like more zoomed out, but also more like, yeah, horizontal, more kind of like this. I
Like
know,
the time and space continuum, like it's all on the same plane.
right, exactly. It's not up and down. It's not like a
Right.
linear you know, ladder.
Yeah. It's not a ladder, it's not an escalator. We're all mhm.
It's all interconnected
I
and
mean,
different.
someone that you have history with is going to be somebody that you're going to have a little bit more hierarchy with just because of the history. Like you've
Mhm,
known each other longer.
mhm.
But that shouldn't trump how much time you spend together, you know, and that shouldn't be at the expense of other partners. I don't, that's just my thought and my feeling, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree. That's why when I'm talking to clients, I tell them as a single person to kind of like make sure you ask these questions before getting involved in somebody who is already partnered in a relationship to make sure that you are getting the things that you want out of it and you feel taken care of because you can get into that and then not be what you the experience you wanted to be and now you're feeling like you've been used and all the other things that come along with it. But it doesn't have to be like that because you can ask all the questions to make sure as if you would with anything, right? With any relationships you're getting into, you would ask these questions. So why not ask these in this scenario as well?
Yeah. Some people want that. The unicorns, right? Like maybe they would like to be the secondary partner or tertiary partner,
Yes,
Mhm.
yes,
But
yes,
it's a conversation for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
All right, that was good. Good talk, everyone.
Well,
yes,
my takeaway is that even if you do choose hierarchy, I mean, I think one way that you can practice non-hierarchy for the sake of decolonizing relationships, Mo, as you mentioned, is just like noticing where things kind of like where decisions kind of happen automatically or seem to kind of happen automatically, and maybe yeah, have a more intentional decision making practice practice around that versus it just being automatic. Like it can be a conversation, it can be a question. So just be open to that versus just like going with the assumption that it should be this way.
Yeah.
Well, this was a good convo. Thanks. Thanks, Mo, for
Gotta
being
go.
here.
Love y'all. Bye.
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 okay.
Thank you for listening. Shades of Pleasure podcast is currently unsponsored and is brought to you by Los Angeles Sex Therapy and Last Collective in partnership with Shades Therapy and Shades of Non-monogamy. To support our endeavor so we can continue to bring this pleasurable content, please visit our Substack at shadesofpleasure.substack.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time.